You ever wake up at 3:17 in the morning with the taste of adrenaline and old dread in your mouth, only to find the president of your HOA in your living room drunk on wine and Power 6 cops at her side with their hands itching on their holsters? That's how it started for me, folks. Right there in my own house, flashlight beams slicing through the dark, lighting up every family photo, every inch of hardwood I'd spent months restoring. Victoria Whitmore thought she could bulldoze me like all the others, make me disappear, her words, not mine, like the folks who came before me. What she didn't know, I was Mason Sterling, the guy who literally wrote the Federal Waterway Rights Act, the law she'd violated so many times I could barely keep count. She had 72 hours left before she'd be sitting in a federal holding cell, headline news across the country, facing charges that would stack up to almost 3 centuries in prison. Now, if you've ever been run over by an HOA, if you've watched good neighbors get hounded out of their homes, go ahead and smash that like button, because what I'm about to tell you might just save your property, your sanity, and maybe a whole lot more. If you get anything out of this story, just know you're not alone. And if you want to see more HOA takedowns, you know what to do. But let's back up a second, 12 years actually, to the day this whole thing began. March 15th, 2012. The courtroom reeked of old leather and cold sweat. I was sitting next to Carlos Valdez, watching the walls close in on the biggest drug empire the Great Lakes had ever seen. For 3 years, I'd been his defense attorney, towing the line between legal representation and moral bankruptcy. When the feds finally caught him, they seized everything: boats, houses, accounts, $43 million worth of assets except for one lake house. See, Carlos had signed that place over to me as payment 6 months before the indictments hit. "This house is special, Mason," he said, his voice worn raw by cigarettes and paranoia, not for what it is, but for what it knows. I figured he was being poetic or just losing it under pressure. But you know, a $2 million lake house with 800 feet of shoreline. Hard to say no, especially after 15 years as the Coast Guard's senior legal counsel. I'd spent my career obsessed with jurisdiction, who gets to do what on which patch of water. Wrote every word of the Federal Waterway Rights Act myself, fought for every comma, testified before Congress 17 times. Then walked away tired of politics, ready for simple criminal defense. And if I'm honest, better money. But that house sat empty for months after Carlos got locked up. Moving in felt like crossing some line I wasn't sure I wanted to cross. Eventually, I caved. The mortgage in town was killing me, and that view, man. So I moved in during a rainstorm, boxes getting soaked, the smell of pine and lake water promising some kind of redemption. Only problem was, Carlos had built that place like a fortress. Hidden passages reinforced everything, a basement you could ride out the apocalypse in, plus a boat dock stretching into the lake like a wooden finger. But what really got me was the hidden tunnel connecting the basement to a boat slip, completely invisible unless you knew where to look. For a year, life was good. Wrote legal articles, fished every morning, eased my way into the community. The HOA dormant. Dues went to potholes, and you'd get a newsletter about garage sales, maybe a bake-off. But then second year, things shifted. New faces on the board, meetings ramping up. Suddenly folks were obsessed with community standards. That's when Victoria Whitmore showed up, started as treasurer, then secretary, vice president, then president, moved faster through those ranks than a politician with dirt on the committee. She was 55. Hair like spun straw, face pulled tight enough to bounce a quarter-off smile like a shark. First time I noticed her was July 4th, 2018. She pulled up in a white Bentley sundress and jewelry flashing in the sun, worked the crowd like a pro, promising full potential for the community. Older folks kept their guard up, but the younger families ate it up. Talk of property values, amenities, exclusivity. By the next year, the HOA went from neighborly to nightmare. Measured your grass with rulers, fined you for the wrong mailbox color. 3 families left couldn't take the harassment, the legal bills. The Johnsons sold their house at a loss after their son Tommy, 19, drowned in a boating accident. the kind of accident the police close quick and quiet. His dad told me at the funeral Tommy had been digging into something about the HOA the night he died, but after that nobody wanted to talk. Same pattern every time, small violation, then a pile of notices, bogus fees, legal threats. Until you snapped and sold to a generic-sounding LLC. Houses would sit empty, maybe a light at night, maybe strange folks coming and going, but no neighbors, no kids, no life. That's when I started paying attention, writing everything down, dates, faces, times, odd deliveries. Mrs. Patterson, sweet old lady 2 doors down, whispered to me during our walks, boats at night, voices in foreign tongues, lights switching off when you got too close. They're using our lake for something terrible, she'd say, her hand shaking on my arm. Then came the pandemic, Victoria's golden opportunity. Courts closed, folks stuck at home. She rammed through $5,000 improvement assessments, boat restrictions, a rule, letting the board enter your home with just 24 hours notice. Question it, and suddenly you were a health risk facing more fines. That's when Robert Patterson, no relation, a retired FBI agent, moved in next door. He caught on fast, pulled me aside, and said, "I've seen money laundering with more transparency. These accounts don't add up." We started comparing notes following the money-tracing contractors who didn't exist, legal fees that could have funded a coup. What we found, Victoria wasn't just a petty tyrant. She was fronting for something way bigger, way nastier. Then construction trucks started rolling in at night. No logos, no permits, just unmarked trucks dropping off equipment. I started snapping photos from my kayak, found empty houses being gutted and rebuilt, with commercial-grade internet ventilation pro lighting green screens. Foreign boats showed up, big yachts from nowhere, crews speaking Mandarin and Cantonese. 24/7 rotating shifts, folks working and sleeping in the houses, never mixing with locals. One morning, a speedboat nearly took my dock off, loaded with elaborate Chinese costumes. The driver, a kid barely out of his teens, scared out of his mind. Disappeared as quick as he came. Mrs. Patterson started fading, and honestly, I think it was the fear that got her more than age. She'd survived wars, depressions, you name it. But what was happening to our lake broke her spirit. I started getting fines for bird feeders, unlicensed maritime navigation with my kayak nonsense stacked on nonsense. Dug into Victoria's background with some old Coast Guard contacts, found out she didn't exist. Before 2016, had perfect credit, millions in assets, a trail too clean to be real. A wind-blown work order tipped us off Golden Dragon entertainment set, construction talent, housing billing to our addresses registered in the Cayman's parent company in Beijing, ties to propaganda agencies. Robert and I met at a diner, both of us paranoid as hell. He said, "They're using the lake for film production, but this isn't Hollywood. The secrecy, the security, something's wrong." Showed him my photos, kids mostly, Asian in costume faces drawn with fear. Realized the empty houses were dorms, the boats prison ships. Victoria's HOA was a front for trafficking disguised as filmmaking. With help from Admiral Morrison, my old Coast Guard boss, we prepped the case. Then I found my smoking gun buried in my own law. Section 7, paragraph 12, said any commercial operation on a residential waterway needed federal permits and inspections violations carrying 15-year minimums per count. All I needed was rock-solid evidence. Used Carlos's old surveillance gear cameras that could see in pitch-black hidden tunnel access, the whole works. In 2 weeks, I captured boats unloading frightened young people at 3 a.m., armed guards Victoria on satellite phones speaking Russian, negotiating payments and talent deliveries. Biggest punch to the gut, I heard her on tape admitting to staging Tommy Johnson's accident to cover up an escape attempt. Played it for Robert, he went cold, already planning the takedown. We knew it was all or nothing. Then just as we were ready, Victoria made her move. Showed up at dawn, Range Rover board members in navy blazers, construction trucks in tow. Walked into my living room without asking, slapped fake eviction notices, and a buyout offer of $800,000 on my table, insulting given the place was worth triple that. When I called her bluff, she threatened me straight up in front of witnesses, told me to watch my back on the water. Heard one board member whisper, "How many more accidents can we explain?" Victoria shot back. "As many as necessary." I called Robert, he mobilized the feds. That night I set up every camera I had, waited. Next day the fines tripled, the threats got bolder. By noon, Robert had confirmation Golden Dragon was already under federal investigation for trafficking. The feds needed 48 hours. I took my kayak to recon from the lake. What I saw broke me. Kids in costume guards with real gun surveillance screens everywhere. An old fisherman flagged me down, said his granddaughter was trapped, brought for Hollywood passport taken. I told him help was coming. That evening, Victoria tried one last bribe, an envelope with $1 million final offer and a photo of me taken that day, camera in hand. Death threat, clear as day. Called Admiral Morrison. He sent a Coast Guard cutter to anchor nearby, routine, survey my foot. That night I slept in my uniform, jacket badge visible. At 2:30, boats started moving, 40 people being hustled onto yachts, Victoria in a white gown shrieking into her phone. I called it in. Coast Guard descended like Judgment Day, floodlights, bullhorns, every language under the sun, chaos on the water. As dawn broke, Victoria tried to turn the tables, called 911, claimed I was a terrorist holding her hostage. Cops showed up, guns drawn, but I was waiting on the porch, hands up, uniform on, every light blazing. "Check my cameras," I said. "She's the trafficker." Sheriff's radio crackled. "FBI, Coast Guard have operational control. Stand by for federal marshals." Victoria lost it, tried accusing me of murder, pulled fake documents. Marshals cuffed her, read her real name, Volkov, wanted in Russia for organized crime. Feds stormed the empty houses, found cells in basements offshore, money horror upon horror. 43 people rescued, HOA board arrested, millions traced to criminal networks. The media circus was wild, but the community changed overnight. New HOA, new laws, my laws, public meetings, public books, no more secret votes, and every change required a real majority. Property values shot up, families came back. Johnson Park was dedicated to Tommy. Mrs. Patterson became a local legend, and Robert taught financial crime at Quantico. I stayed fixed up, the house sealed. The tunnels, gave the gear to the cops, took HOA abuse cases pro bono. The law that saved us is now national precedent. And sometimes, in the quiet of the lake, I think about Victoria serving life behind bars, caught by the very statute she ignored, caged by the law I wrote. She wanted me to disappear. Turns out she's the one who vanished, and this lake is finally free. So, what would you do if this was your backyard? Would you fight or would you run? Drop a comment. Let's talk about justice. And if you've ever faced an HOA nightmare, share your story. Because silence isn't always fear. Sometimes it's just someone getting ready to win.